Shalom Aleichem, Mishpachim. We're in a new day of the Tanya. And I'm coming to you with my Sefer Chayenu. This is a Chabad publication. And it's got so many Sefarim in here. Chumash with Rashi, Haftarah with commentary, Daily Tehillim, Tanya, Hayom Yom, more Rambam, Daily Wisdom of the Babbatar Rebbe. It's got Tanakh, Geula, Hasidus, Talmud, and Yaakov, Mishnah. Oh my gosh, so much that you can learn from. Wonderful. It's like I'm a kid in a candy shop. I've got all my Sefarim here in one Sefer. Well, I will be reading here with you guys today, Tanya. All right, it's a new day in the Tanya, the second of Tevet. Let us begin. Readings for Thursday. Overview of Chapter 6. The animal-like soul, which animates the body, also has 10 channels of expression to counter the divine souls, 7 emotional, 3 intellectual. These, however, are not holy expressions, but mundane and worldly. Holiness resides where there is submission to godly will. Otherwise, it is klipa. In today's lesson, the animal soul also consists of 10 faculties, 7 emotional and 3 intellectual, and garments of thought, speech, and action. They, however, are impure. Beginning of Chapter 6. In the previous chapters, the Alter Rebbe discussed the divine soul, its 10 faculties, 3 intellectual and 7 emotional, and its 3 garments by which it expresses itself, namely the thought, speech, and action of Torah and the mitzvot. In Chapter 6, the Alter Rebbe begins to discuss the animal soul. He explains that its structure exactly parallels that of the divine soul. It too has 10 faculties and 3 garments, only, unlike the divine soul, the substance of the animal soul is klipa, and its faculties and garments are impurity. By clothing itself in these garments, the animal soul descends to an even lower state of impurity. Concerning the concept of klipa, we have noted in Chapter 1 that although all existence was created by and receives its life from godliness, yet, in order that man be able to choose between good and evil, and that he earn his reward by serving his Creator by his own effort, God created forces of impurity which conceal the godliness in all of creation. These forces are called klipa, plural klipot, literally meaning shells or peels. Just as the shell conceals the fruit, so do the forces of klipa conceal the godliness in every created being. There are 2 categories in klipot: klipat noiga, a klipa inclusive of light, and the 3 unclean klipot. The first category, klipat noiga, contains some measure of good. It is thus an intermediary level between the realms of good and evil, and whatever receives its vitality via the concealing screen of this klipa may be utilized for either good or evil. To this category belong all permitted physical objects. They may be used for a mitzvah and ascend thereby to the realm of holiness, or they may be used sinfully, God forbid, and thereby be further degraded. The second category, consisting of the 3 impure klipot, is holy evil. Whatever receives its vitality via concealment of this type of klipa cannot be transformed into holiness, nor, in some cases, may it even be used in the service of holiness. To this category belong all forbidden physical objects, whether forbidden only for consumption, in which case they cannot be transformed into holiness, but they may serve it, or whether forbidden for any form of benefit, in which case they cannot even serve any holy purpose. The Almighty has created one thing opposite the other. Just as the divine soul consists of 10 holy faculties, which correspond to the 10 supernal sefirot, and is clothed in 3 holy garments, the thought, speech, and action of Torah and mitzvot, so too the soul of Sitra Achra, defined further in this chapter, derived from klipat noiga, which is clothed in man's blood, as explained in Chapter 1. The animal soul is clothed in the blood and thereby animates the body. This soul, too, consists of 10 crowns of impurity, the faculties of klipa, called crowns in Kabbalistic terminology. These 10 faculties are 7 evil midot, 7 emotional traits. Lust, the equivalent of klipa, and the midah of chesed, kindness, anger, which expresses the midah of gevurah, severity. Boastfulness, the equivalent of tiferet, beauty, and so forth. which stem from the four evil elements mentioned above. Spiritual entities have their elements, as physical objects do, in this case evil elements, since this is a soul of Klippa. And the intellect, Sechel, which gives birth to these 7 evil midot, which is subdivided into 3, Chachma, Bina, and Dat, the source of the midot. The intellectual faculties are described as the source of the evil midot, for the midot are commensurate with the quality of one's intellect. A child desires and loves. He expresses his midah of chesed towards petty things of little value, for his intellect is too immature and deficient to appreciate more valuable things. Similarly, with regard to the midah of gevura, he is angered and vexed by trivial things. And likewise, with regard to boastfulness, which expresses the midah of tiferet and other midot. This correlation between midot and intellect indicates that the intellect affects the nature and expression of midot. And for this reason, the 3 intellectual faculties are said to be the source of the 7 midot. All right, a comparison of the Alter Rebbe's description here of the faculties of the animal soul, which his description in chapter 3 of the divine soul yields several significant differences. In chapter 3, the sechel faculties, the intellectual faculties, are given first. Here, midot precede sechel. In both cases, the sechel is used to be the source of midot. Yet, whereas in chapter 3, this is explained to mean that sechel gives birth to midot. Here it is stated only that sechel is the source of midot because they are commensurate with the quality of sechel, of the intellect. These variations arise from the fundamental difference between the nature of the divine soul and that of the animal soul. The divine soul is essentially intellective, wherefore it is called Adam, which of the various Hebrew words for man means man, the intelligent being. Its midot actually arise out of the sechel. Its emotions of love and fear of God stem from the sechel's contemplation of his greatness. This animal soul, on the other hand, is essentially and instinctively passionate. It inclines naturally towards physical pleasures and need not ponder their desirability in order to desire them. Here, the sechel serves merely to steer and channel the development of midot. It is called their source only insofar as they reflect and are commensurate with it. Now, these 10 unclean categories, when a person thinks thoughts originating from them, when he thinks of ways of obtaining something he desires, or speaks words originating from them, or does an act which serves or expresses them, then the thought in his brain, the words in his mouth, and the power of action in his hands and other organs are called impure garments for these 10 unclean categories, which clothe themselves in these garments during the act, speech, or thought. But what sort of thoughts, words, and actions are the garments of the animal soul? Earlier in chapter 4, we learned that the divine soul has specific thoughts in which it clothes itself, namely thought, speech, and action in matters of Torah and the mitzvot. Are we then to understand that the animal soul, too, has specific garments, sinful thoughts, words, or actions, perhaps? Not so, states the Alter Rebbe presently. All thoughts, words, and acts that are not directed toward God and the service of God, even though they are not actually sinful, are garments of the Klippa, and hence of the animal soul. In his words, these garments of the animal soul comprise all the deeds that are done under the sun, all mundane actions, which are all vanity and an affliction of the spirit, as the Zohar interprets this, a ruination of the spirit of holiness. Similarly, all words and all thoughts that are not directed to God and to his will and his service are all garments for the animal soul. For this is the meaning of the term, sitra achra, literally the other side, not the side of holiness, but the opposite. Thus, whatever does not belong to the realm of holiness is sitra achra. But what, in fact, does the realm of holiness encompass? The side of holiness is nothing but the indwelling and extension of God's holiness. Now, God dwells only on that which is surrender to him, whether the surrender is an actual one and visible even in that surrendered being's external aspects, as is the case with the supernal angels, whose entire being is constantly and openly surrendered to God, or whether it is a potential surrender, as in the case of every Jew here below in this physical world, who has the capacity for surrendering himself completely before God, through martyrdom for the sanctification of God's name. As explained further in the Tanya, every Jew has the capacity for such self-sacrifice. In the face of an attempt to coerce him to forsake Judaism, he will willingly suffer martyrdom. Thus, every Jew possesses internally within his soul the potential for surrender to God. Whatever his external state, this potential, however, may reveal itself only in the act of martyrdom. Because he is surrendered to God, God's holiness rests upon him. That is why our sages have said that, if even one individual sits and engages in Torah study, the divine presence rests upon him. For when one engages in Torah study, his surrender to godliness emerges, to affect him on a revealed external level, since such study entails setting aside one's own notions and presumptions in order to understand and accept God's wisdom, and will as expressed in Torah. It is this surrender to godliness that causes the divine presence to rest upon the Torah student. Also, on each gathering of 10 Jews, the divine presence rests always. Together, 10 Jews form a congregation of Israel, which is a fit abode for the divine presence. And the takeaway we can get from this, Tanya reading, God's presence resides within anything or anyone that is subservient to God and allows him in. You have that potential power in you.